In a village where the morning sun painted the hills in gold and the evening rain blessed the fields with life, there lived two neighbors whose lives were remarkably similar, yet whose experiences could not have been more different. Their names were Benjamin and Olivia. Both lived in modest homes made of stone and wood. Both worked the same land, planted the same crops, and endured the same unpredictable seasons. Both had lost loved ones to illness. Both struggled with aching backs and calloused hands. Both faced the same storms, the same droughts, the same challenges that life presented to everyone in the village. But if you spoke to Benjamin, you would think he lived in the darkest corner of the world. "This heat is unbearable," he would say on sunny days, wiping his brow with exaggerated exhaustion. "How is anyone supposed to work in these conditions?" When the rains came, he would grumble, "Of course it's raining. Just when I finally had time to repair the roof, nothing ever works in my favor." If his crops grew well, he complained about the work required to harvest them. If they grew poorly, he cursed the soil, the seeds, and his misfortune. His children avoided him because every conversation became a catalogue of grievances. His wife moved through the house like a ghost, having learned years ago that no joy could survive Benjamin's determination to find fault with everything. "Why do I have this life?" he would ask the sky, though he never waited for an answer. "Why does everything happen to me?" Olivia, on the other hand, seemed to carry sunlight wherever she walked. On hot days, she would say, "What a blessing to feel the sun on my face. My grandmother always said warmth is life's way of embracing us." When the rains came, she would stand in her doorway and smile. "Listen to that music. The earth is drinking. Tomorrow, everything will be greener." When her back ached from field work, she would pause and say, "These hands have held my children, planted 1,000 seeds, and built a home. What an honor to have hands strong enough to ache." Her home was always filled with laughter. Neighbors found reasons to visit her. Children gravitated toward her like flowers turning toward light. Yet she had experienced the same losses, the same hardships, the same unchangeable circumstances as Benjamin. The village often wondered, how could two people living such similar lives experience them so differently? One autumn evening, as the harvest season approached its end, a traveling merchant came through the village. He was an old man with eyes that seemed to hold centuries of wisdom, and he carried with him not just goods to trade, but stories from distant lands. The merchant set up his camp at the edge of the village, and as was the custom, the villagers came to see what he had brought. Benjamin arrived first, as he always did, hoping to find something that would finally make him happy. "Your wares are overpriced," he declared, before even examining them properly. "And this location is terrible, too far from the village center. You'll never make good business here." The merchant simply smiled and nodded. Olivia arrived shortly after, carrying fresh bread as a gift of welcome. "What beautiful craftsmanship," she said, examining a simple clay bowl. "Someone made this with their hands, with care. Every item here has a story." The merchant's eyes sparkled with recognition. The recognition of someone who understood something profound about life. That night, the merchant did something unusual. He invited both Benjamin and Olivia to join him by his fire, saying he had something to show them. "I have traveled across mountains and deserts, through kingdoms and villages," the merchant began, his voice like gravel smoothed by time. "And everywhere I go, I meet two kinds of people. Would you like to know what I've discovered?" Benjamin shrugged with disinterest. Olivia leaned forward with curiosity. "I'll show you instead of telling you," the merchant said with a mysterious smile. And with those words, he began a demonstration that would change at least one of them forever. The merchant reached into his pack and pulled out two identical clay cups, simple and unadorned. "I bought these from the same craftsman on the same day," he explained. "They are twins, born from the same clay, shaped by the same hands, fired in the same kiln. He placed both cups on the ground between Benjamin and Olivia. Then he filled each cup with water from his canteen, exactly half full. "Now," the merchant said, his voice taking on the quality of a teacher presenting a crucial lesson, "tell me what you see." Benjamin glanced at his cup with barely concealed disdain. "It's half empty, barely enough water to satisfy thirst. If you're trying to be a good host, you're failing." The merchant turned to Olivia. "And you?" Olivia picked up her cup carefully, as if it were precious. "It's half full. More water than many people in the world have access to. Enough to quench thirst, to wash a wound, to water a seedling. A gift." "Interesting," the merchant said, though his expression suggested he had expected exactly these responses. The same cup, the same water, the same reality, but two completely different experiences. Benjamin rolled his eyes. "It's just an old saying. Half empty, half full. Everyone knows that parable. Is this why you called us here? To tell us children's stories?" "No," the merchant replied calmly. "I called you here to show you something you don't yet understand. The cup is just the beginning." He produced a small leather journal from his pack, its pages yellowed with age. "In my travels, I've kept records. I've observed human nature across countless villages and cities, and I've discovered something remarkable about people who constantly complain about what they cannot change." He opened the journal to a page filled with neat handwriting. "They don't just suffer once from their circumstances, they suffer twice, 3 times, 100 times. They take a single moment of difficulty and relive it endlessly through complaint, spreading the poison of that one moment across their entire existence." Benjamin shifted uncomfortably. "Life is hard. People need to express their frustrations. What's wrong with being honest about suffering?" "Nothing is wrong with honesty," the merchant replied. "But tell me, Benjamin, and I ask this with genuine curiosity, not judgment, when you complain about the heat, does it make you cooler?" Benjamin opened his mouth, then closed it. "When you curse the rain, does it stop falling?" Silence. "When you lament your aching back, does the pain diminish?" Benjamin's jaw tightened. "No, but at least I'm not pretending everything is perfect like some people." He glanced pointedly at Olivia. Olivia smiled gently, but said nothing. The merchant nodded as if Benjamin had just proved his point. "You think gratitude is pretending? You think acknowledging blessings means ignoring problems? This is where you are mistaken, and this mistake is costing you everything." He stood up and walked a few steps away, gesturing to the night sky above them. "Look up. Tell me what you see." Benjamin glanced up briefly. "Stars. Sky. What does this have to do with anything?" "Olivia?" the merchant prompted. Olivia tilted her head back, her eyes widening with wonder. Thousands of lights, maybe millions, each one a sun burning across unimaginable distances. Our ancestors navigated by these stars. Lovers have gazed at them for millennia. They're still there, still shining, still guiding anyone who looks up. The merchant returned to the fire. "The same sky, but one of you saw an interruption to our conversation. The other saw infinity." He poked the fire with a stick, sending sparks dancing into the darkness. "Let me tell you about a village I visited 3 years ago in a land ravaged by drought. The crops had failed for 2 consecutive seasons. People were hungry. Children cried from empty bellies. It was, by any measure, a tragedy." Benjamin leaned forward slightly, interested despite himself. "In that village I met 2 fathers. The first father spent his days sitting outside his home, cursing the absent rain, cursing the government, cursing fate itself. He grew so consumed by bitterness that he stopped tending even the small garden his wife tried to maintain. "What's the point?" he would say. "Everything dies anyway." The merchant's voice grew softer. His family grew thinner. His wife's eyes lost their light. His children learned to speak in whispers, afraid that any sound might trigger another outburst of complaint. "And the other father?" Olivia asked gently. The other father acknowledged the drought. He didn't pretend it wasn't happening, but every morning he would gather his children and say, "Today we are alive. Today we have each other. Today we will find something to be grateful for." The merchant's eyes reflected the firelight. Some days it was a small patch of shade. Other days it was a neighbor sharing half a loaf of bread. Sometimes it was simply that their family was together, healthy enough to face another day. Did his gratitude make the drought end? Benjamin challenged. Did his positive thinking make food appear? No, the merchant admitted. The drought ended when the rains returned, and that happened for everyone, complainers and grateful people alike. Nature doesn't discriminate. He paused, letting the fire crackle in the silence. But here's what did happen differently. The first father, even when the rains finally came, found new things to complain about. The mud was too thick. The planting would be too much work. He had suffered too much to ever enjoy life again. His habit of complaint had become his identity. And the second father? Olivia prompted. When the first drops of rain fell, he stood in the downpour with his children, laughing, dancing, weeping with joy. And because he had practiced gratitude during the hardship, he knew how to experience joy when blessings returned. His heart remained open, flexible, alive. The merchant looked directly at Benjamin now, his gaze penetrating but not unkind. "You asked what's wrong with being honest about suffering. Nothing, but complaint is not honesty. Complaint is the repetitive fixation on what's wrong while ignoring everything else. It's like staring at a crack in a beautiful vase and declaring the entire vessel worthless." He picked up the half-full cup again. "This water represents your life. Every life has limitations. Every cup is only so large. But inside these limitations, there is still water, still life, still possibility, still moments worth savoring." Benjamin stood up abruptly. "You don't understand. My life is genuinely harder than most people's. I've had real losses, real pain. This gratitude nonsense works for people whose lives are easy." The merchant's expression softened with something that looked like compassion. "May I tell you one more story before you leave?" Benjamin hesitated, then sat back down, his arms crossed defensively. "In a distant land, I met a woman who had lost both her legs in an accident. She would never walk again. By any measure, this was a tremendous loss, a genuine, unchangeable hardship." The merchant's voice grew reverent. "I expected to meet someone broken by tragedy. Instead, I met one of the most joyful people I have ever encountered. She ran a shop from her wheelchair. She had dozens of friends. Children loved to visit her because she told the most wonderful stories. One day, I asked her how she maintained such spirit despite her circumstances. Do you know what she told me?" Olivia and Benjamin both leaned forward, waiting. She said, "Every morning I have a choice. I can grieve the legs I lost, or I can celebrate the hands that still work, the mind that still thinks, the heart that still loves, the voice that still speaks, the eyes that still see. I cannot change what happened to me, but I can choose what I focus on, and that choice determines whether I live or merely exist." The merchant's words hung in the air, like smoke from the fire. She understood something profound. Complaining about what you cannot change is not honesty. It's not even expression. It's self-inflicted suffering. It's taking a single tragedy and choosing to experience it continuously, moment after moment, day after day, until that one unchangeable thing becomes your entire identity. Benjamin sat very still, his face a mixture of emotions, resistance, recognition, anger, and something that might have been the first crack in years of hardened bitterness. "So what am I supposed to do?" he asked, his voice quieter than before, almost vulnerable. "Just pretend I'm happy when I'm not. Smile through pain, lie to myself that everything is fine." The merchant shook his head firmly. "No, that would be denial. And denial is just another form of dishonesty." He reached into his pack once more and pulled out a blank piece of parchment and 2 pieces of charcoal. "I'm going to ask you both to do something. Write down everything in your life that causes you genuine difficulty. Everything you wish were different, everything you cannot change." He handed parchment and charcoal to both Benjamin and Olivia. For several minutes, the only sound was the scratching of charcoal on parchment. Benjamin filled his page quickly, his writing angry and rushed. Olivia wrote more slowly, pausing often to think. When they finished, the merchant took both pieces of parchment and held them up to the firelight. "Benjamin, your list is long. Your back pain, your lost brother, your aging parents, your difficult neighbors, the unpredictable weather, your diminishing strength as you grow older, the cost of living, the government's taxes." Benjamin nodded grimly. "See, my life is full of problems." The merchant turned to Olivia Parchment. "And your list? Your back pain, your lost brother, your aging parents, your difficult neighbors, the unpredictable weather, your diminishing strength as you grow older, the cost of living, the government's taxes." Olivia nodded simply. "Yes, those are true difficulties." Benjamin's eyes widened. He stared at Olivia in disbelief. "But you're always happy. You always seem grateful. How can you have the same problems and not complain about them?" This was the moment the merchant had been guiding them toward. Olivia turned to face Benjamin fully, her eyes kind but direct. "I have the same problems, Benjamin, but I don't have only problems." She reached for the blank side of her parchment and began writing again. "My back hurts, and I have a back that can still bend, still work, still carry me through my days. My brother died, and I had a brother to love, and his memory still brings me moments of joy. My parents are aging, and they are still here, still able to share their wisdom. The weather is unpredictable, and I live in a land where rain comes, where seasons change, where life grows." Her voice grew stronger, more certain. "I see the cracks in the vase, Benjamin, but I also see the vase. You only see the cracks, and so for you, there is no vase at all. There is nothing but brokenness." Benjamin's hands trembled slightly. "But how do you do it? How do you shift your focus like that?" The merchant spoke softly. "That is the question. That is the real question. Not why is my life hard, but how do I hold both the difficulty and the beauty at the same time?" He placed both pieces of parchment side by side on the ground. Gratitude is not the absence of problems. It is the presence of perspective. It is the deliberate, conscious choice to acknowledge the full reality of your life, not just the parts that hurt. He drew a circle in the dirt around both lists. "Your life contains all of this, the pain and the joy, the loss and the love, the struggle and the strength, but complaint teaches you to stare only at the pain until you forget everything else exists." The merchant's voice took on an urgency, a passion that suggested he deeply cared about what he was saying. Every moment you spend complaining about what you cannot change is a moment you cannot spend appreciating what you have. And here is the tragedy, Benjamin. Here is the hidden cost that you don't yet see. He leaned forward, his eyes locked on Benjamin. While you complain about your aching back, you miss the sunset. While you curse the rain, you miss your daughter's laughter from inside the house. While you lament your lost brother, you fail to cherish the living family around you. While you fixate on the heat, you miss the taste of cold water on your tongue. The merchant's voice cracked slightly with emotion. You are alive, Benjamin. You have hands that work, eyes that see, ears that hear. You have a home, you have food, you have family, and you are letting all of it pass by, unnoticed, unsavored, unappreciated, because you have trained yourself to see only what's missing, what's broken, what's wrong. Benjamin's eyes filled with tears, the first tears he had allowed himself to feel in years. I'm so tired, he whispered. I'm so tired of being angry. I'm so tired of feeling like life is happening to me instead of for me. But I don't know how to change. This is who I've become. Olivia reached over and gently placed her hand on Benjamin's arm. The first time they had touched in years, despite being neighbors. You change the same way a river changes its course, she said softly. One small turn at a time. You don't have to become perfectly grateful overnight. You just have to start noticing one thing, one single thing each day that you're thankful for. The merchant nodded emphatically. She's right. Gratitude is not a feeling you wait to experience. It's a practice. It's a muscle you strengthen through use. And like any muscle, it's weak at first, but it grows. He picked up Benjamin's list of complaints. Tonight, before you sleep, I want you to do something. For every complaint on this list, I want you to find one corresponding gratitude. Not to erase the problem, but to balance it. Benjamin took the parchment with shaking hands. And if I do this, what changes? The merchant smiled, the firelight dancing in his ancient eyes. Everything. And nothing? Your circumstances may remain the same, but you, the person experiencing those circumstances, you become someone different. Someone who can find water in the desert, someone who can see stars in the darkness, someone who knows that life is not about avoiding pain, but about choosing what you focus on within that pain. He stood up slowly, his old bones creaking. The question is not why is my life hard? The question is, given that my life contains both difficulty and beauty, which will I feed with my attention? Because what you feed grows. What you starve diminishes. Benjamin sat in silence, staring at the two lists, the complaints and the gratitudes, side by side. For the first time in longer than he could remember, he saw his life as something other than a burden to endure. He saw it as a choice to make. The merchant departed the next morning, his cart creaking down the road toward distant horizons, his mission in the village complete. But something had shifted in Benjamin, a small crack in the dam he had built around his heart. That first night, following the merchant's instructions, Benjamin sat with his list of complaints. He stared at the first item. My back hurts. He took a deep breath and picked up the charcoal. After a long moment, he wrote, My back hurts, and I have a back that has carried me for 50 years. It has bent to lift my children when they were small. It has curved over fields that fed my family. It has supported me through 5 decades of life. The words felt strange on the page, unfamiliar, almost uncomfortable, but not false. He moved to the next complaint. My brother died too young. His hand trembled. This one was harder. The grief was real and deep. He wrote slowly. My brother died too young, and I had a brother who taught me how to fish, who defended me from bullies, who stood beside me at my wedding. I carry his laughter in my memory. He existed, he mattered, he loved me. Tears fell onto the parchment, smudging the words. But these were different tears than the bitter ones he had cried before. These tears acknowledged loss without drowning in it. The practice didn't erase his pain, but it gave the pain context. It reminded him that loss proves there was once something worth losing. Each night for the next month, Benjamin repeated the exercise. Some nights the gratitudes came easily. Other nights he could barely force himself to write anything positive. But he kept his promise to the merchant. And slowly, so slowly he almost didn't notice, something began to change. His wife noticed first. One morning, as she served him breakfast, he said something he hadn't said in over a decade. "Thank you." She nearly dropped the bowl in shock. "Thank you for this food," he continued, the words awkward on his tongue. "For waking early to make it. For standing by me all these years when I gave you so little joy." His wife's eyes filled with tears. "Benjamin, I'm trying," he said simply. "I'm trying to see what's here instead of only what's missing." Over the following weeks, his children began visiting more often. They were cautious at first, expecting the old Benjamin, the father who found fault with everything, who turned every conversation into a complaint. But gradually, they discovered someone different emerging. Someone who asked about their lives and actually listened. Someone who could laugh without the laughter being cut short by bitterness. Someone who occasionally even smiled. One evening, about 2 months after the merchant's visit, Benjamin walked over to Olivia's house, something he had never done in all their years as neighbors. She answered the door with surprise and invited him in for tea. They sat in her simple kitchen, steam rising from clay cups between them. "I owe you an apology," Benjamin said, staring into his tea. "Years of apology. I've been a terrible neighbor, a terrible example. I've spread my misery like a sickness." Olivia shook her head gently. "You've been suffering, Benjamin. That's not the same as being terrible." "But I made others suffer too," he insisted. "My wife, my children, anyone who had to listen to my constant complaints. I poisoned my own life and tried to poison everyone else's." "And now?" Olivia asked softly. "Now I'm trying to see the cup as half full instead of half empty," he said with a weak smile. "Some days I succeed. Most days I still fail. But I'm trying." Olivia reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "That's all any of us can do. Try, notice, choose again. And when we forget, because we will forget, choose again." Benjamin looked around her kitchen, seeing it with new eyes. It was no different than his own, simple, worn, modest. But it felt entirely different. It felt like a home instead of a prison. "How did you learn this?" he asked. "This way of seeing?" Olivia was quiet for a moment, remembering, when my brother died, I had a choice. I could honor his memory by living fully, by appreciating every moment he no longer had. Or I could dishonor it by wasting the life he would have given anything to keep. I chose to live for both of us. Her eyes glistened but remained clear. Gratitude didn't erase my grief, but it gave me a reason to keep going. It showed me that life contains multitudes, grief and joy, loss and beauty, pain and wonder, all existing together, and I could choose which one to amplify with my attention. Benjamin nodded slowly, understanding growing in his chest like a seed finally receiving water. "The merchant was right," he said. "I was drinking poison and expecting everyone else to die from it." "And now you're choosing a different drink," Olivia replied with a warm smile. As autumn deepened and winter approached, the village began to notice the change in Benjamin. It wasn't dramatic, It wasn't perfect. He still had days where old patterns reasserted themselves. But more and more often, people heard him say things they'd never heard before. "This soup is delicious. What a beautiful sunset. My daughter told me the funniest story today. Thank you for your help. I'm grateful for this day." His wife began to sing again while cooking, something she hadn't done in 15 years. His children brought their own children to visit, wanting them to know their grandfather not as a source of bitterness, but as someone who had found his way back to life. 1 year after the merchant's visit, Benjamin sat on his porch, watching the same sunset he had watched 1,000 times before, but had never truly seen. Olivia walked by and waved. "Beautiful evening, isn't it?" "It is," Benjamin replied, meaning it. "Every evening is beautiful when you remember to look." She smiled and continued walking, and Benjamin returned to his contemplation of the fading light. His back still ached. His brother was still gone. His house was still modest. The weather was still unpredictable. Nothing had changed. Everything had changed. Because Benjamin had finally understood what the merchant had tried to teach him. Complaining about what you cannot change is like trying to empty the ocean with a cup. It's exhausting, endless, and accomplishes nothing except making you bitter. But choosing to focus on what you have, even within circumstances you cannot control, that's like lighting a candle in the darkness. It doesn't eliminate the darkness, but it proves that light exists, and it shows you where to place your next step. The merchant's wisdom echoes through time with a simple but profound truth. Don't complain about what you cannot change, not because problems aren't real, not because pain doesn't matter, not because you should pretend everything is perfect, but because complaint without action is poison that you drink yourself while hoping someone else will feel the effects. Every moment spent complaining about unchangeable circumstances is a moment stolen from appreciating what you have. And in that theft, you lose twice. Once to the original difficulty, and again to the bitterness that grows from fixating on it. Life contains both cracks and beauty, both loss and love, both struggle and strength. This is the nature of being human. No amount of complaint will change this fundamental truth. But here's what you can change: where you place your attention. You can stare at the cracks until they're all you see, or you can step back and see the entire vase. Yes, cracked, but still holding water, still beautiful, still functional, still worthy of appreciation. Gratitude is not denial. It's not toxic positivity. It's not pretending problems don't exist. Gratitude is the courageous choice to acknowledge the full reality of your life, both the difficulty and the beauty, and to consciously direct your attention toward what remains rather than only what is missing. The half-full cup and the half-empty cup contain the exact same amount of water. But the person who sees it as half full can still drink and be satisfied. The person who sees it as half empty will always thirst, no matter how much water they're given. You cannot control the weather. You cannot control aging. You cannot control loss. You cannot control many of the circumstances that shape your life, but you can control this: what you choose to see, what you choose to focus on, what you choose to amplify with your attention and your words, because what you feed grows, what you starve diminishes. Feed your complaints and they will multiply until they consume your entire experience of life. Feed your gratitude and it will grow into a garden that can sustain you even in the hardest seasons. The choice is yours. Every single day, every single moment. Will you be Benjamin before the merchant arrived, alive but not living, breathing but not present, surviving but not thriving? Or will you be Olivia, acknowledging difficulty but refusing to let it define you, seeing problems but also seeing possibilities, experiencing pain but also experiencing wonder? The circumstances may be the same, the pain may be equally real, the challenges may be equally difficult, but your experience, your actual lived experience of this one precious life you've been given, will be entirely different. So tonight, before you sleep, try Benjamin practice. Write down your complaints, the real ones, the unchangeable ones, the ones that weigh on your heart. And then, beside each one, write one corresponding gratitude, not to erase the problem, not to pretend it doesn't hurt, but to remind yourself that your life is more than its difficulties. You have a back that aches, and a back that has carried you this far. You have lost people you love, and you have known love deep enough to grieve. You have problems you cannot solve, and you have strengths you haven't yet fully recognized. You have a life that's imperfect, and you have a life which billions of people throughout history would have considered an unimaginable gift. Don't complain about what you cannot change. Instead, choose to see what's still here, still possible, still worth celebrating. Choose gratitude, not because it's easy, not because problems aren't real, but because you deserve to experience the full richness of your life, not just its difficulties. Choose to see the vase, not just the cracks. Choose to see the water, not just the empty space. Choose to see the gift, not just the wrapping that's torn. Your life is waiting for you to notice it, to appreciate it, to live it fully. Don't let another day pass by unseen, unlived, unappreciated because you were too busy complaining about what you cannot change. The sunset is still beautiful, even when your back hurts. The water still quenches thirst, even when the cup isn't full. The light still shines, even when the darkness feels overwhelming. You just have to choose to see it. And that choice, that simple, powerful, life-changing choice, is always, always yours to make.